Okay, now just tell me a little bit about what you've been doing recently.
I'm doing a research project through the Institute of Education, where I work part-time, into looking at how secondary schools can develop outward-facing links to enhance their curriculum and raise people's aspirations, and that's been really exciting. So that's something slightly different to my ordinary staff development role.
So that research project that you've been involved in, what could I learn from that as a school manager?
School managers are very focused on improving pupil standards, and there's a limit to how far you can go just sticking in the classroom. If you want to have a big impact on pupil progress and engagement, then you need to look at those wider links about making your curriculum relevant. So for instance, rather than doing some coursework just for coursework's sake, do it related to a real project which is going to really matter, and that enhances pupil engagement and pupil standards. Because it's for real, they do things to a tighter deadline, to a higher standard.
Okay, so that's higher motivation, higher engagement. If we're thinking about the world of professional development, what are the most exciting things going on right now? If I wanted to ask you to paint a portrait of where we are.
Possibly in quite a worrying situation. Because of the cuts that schools and local authorities are facing and going to be facing for the next couple of years, I fear that staff development is going to be one of the first things that gets cut. And so there's a great risk to all the staff in a school having fewer opportunities. But also having reduced resources isn't necessarily the end of the world, because some of the best staff development that I've come across is things that happen for free or for next to nothing. So I think perhaps it could be an opportunity to look at the power of peer observation, discussion, reading, visiting other schools as opportunities for development, rather than paying a lot of money for going on a course, for instance.
When you're thinking about that whole world of teachers working with each other, learning walks in other schools, what's good practice there? What works?
What works? This is really interesting because I led a big research project for the Training Development Agency for schools on staff development outcomes, which was looking at extremely high performing schools, often high performing against the odds. Many had high numbers of free school meals. And what really was the key to the success of their staff development was the culture of the school, that everyone got on well, everyone was valued, and people spoke to each other, communication was good. And so almost by the fact of being in the building, being with those colleagues, that was excellent staff development for everybody, because it was such a buzzing place. But also in those places, staff development was seen strategically. So it was linked to whole school improvement, but also personal development as well. Because I don't think you can develop the teacher or the teaching assistant just in their professional skills or the skills to do with their job. You need to look at the whole person so that the personal and the professional develop. So people were being strategic about that, about making sure that everyone was invested in, but that things linked to priorities for the school as well, and having a clear focus on pupil progress, the so what factor, the impact on children. And sometimes that impact, if people are going out on courses, is a negative impact on children, because children don't like it when their teacher isn't there.
A thing that's becoming more popular these days is students also being involved in lesson observation, lesson evaluation, curriculum design. Is that useful? Is that important?
Really important. If you want to know how to improve your teaching or your role as a teaching assistant or whatever, asking the children is just dynamite. They get it right and they say it how it is, and that can often be much more effective than, going on a course about behaviour management. If you actually ask the children how they think you should be managing that difficult child in the classroom, they will often have heaps of ideas, and they'll be really good ones because they've often been with that child that's proving difficult at the moment. Over the years, they've seen different people manage this child in different ways with varying degrees of success, and they know what works and what doesn't.
If I'm a school manager and I'm surveying my world and thinking about professional development, what danger signs should I be looking out for?
People leave when they're unhappy, and they're often unhappy because they can't develop. So looking out for warning signs about people leaving, or people getting stale, of people not looking as if they're enjoying their job. I think that's a key factor. With the newly qualified teachers that I work with, one of the important evaluation questions that I ask of them towards the end of the year is, how much are you enjoying your job? And in Lambeth, where I run the newly qualified teacher programme, a huge number say not only that they like it, it's something like 95% say they like or love it, and about half of that 95% or so say they actually love it. And I think, wow, if you are loving your job, teaching in a difficult school, teaching very challenging children in your first year, wow, that probably means that you're highly effective.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because teaching is a very hard and difficult job, but it's easy to get the impression it's a miserable job. In your experience, that's not true.
Well, it's a tough job, it's challenging, but when it works, the rewards are really, really fantastic and well worth the pain.
Okay, if I've opened a school and I decide I better get Sara in to have a look around, and you come in as a consultant, what are some of the first things you'd be doing?
I'd be wandering around the school, popping into classrooms, looking around the environment and getting a feel for the place. I think that kind of culture that hits us as visitors when we go into schools is really important, and that's fundamental, and I think you can't do anything about standards until you get a feel for that culture, because that will help you know what direction you go into. I'd also be wanting to find out the big picture of the school from the school leader, so that I get a feel for how much they know and the evidence that that is based on. Most people know their schools really well, but I'm sometimes very surprised when I find that my picture of things can be quite different to the school leader's picture of things. I'd also be interested in how performance management is working, because I'm a big believer in performance management being there to help all the staff develop, not as a monitoring tool, not particularly linked to pay or all that sort of stuff, but that opportunity to sit down with somebody who knows your work and have a conversation about it in order to celebrate all your successes and think about the next step you need to go in. I'm also an advanced skills teacher assessor, and I lead the national network of advanced skills teachers. And occasionally I assess somebody who is not good enough, and I'm afraid I can't give them AST status. And 9 times out of 10, that is the fault of performance management, that those people haven't had a rigorous enough conversation with somebody that knows their work well enough, that knows whether they are good enough to meet all the standards. And that's a terrible pity. It's very soul destroying for that person that they put all that effort in to be told that they're not good enough.
I've got a couple of your publications here. Is there more to be said? Are we stuck in an orthodoxy?
There has been lots of professional development strategies, lots of developments in pedagogy and the curriculum. But actually, when I go into classrooms, I don't know that things have changed that much in the 30 years that I've been working in schools. So I think looking at the quality of learning rather than all the stuff to do with teaching. Yeah, it's, teaching and learning are two sides of the same coin, but the important side of the coin is the learning that results rather than how you teach it.
Bang.